Hi, my name is Cybele, and I'm here to respond to the claim that adult milk consumption is an unhealthy practice. This claim is supported by three secondary claims: that milk consumption has been found to be bad for one's bones, milk consumption has been found to contribute to an elevated cancer risk, and milk consumption has been linked to other diseases aside from cancer. Throughout my speech, I'm going to show that milk is still a healthy choice. For the first secondary claim, the advocate argues that milk is bad for bones because it does not help to increase bone density that is related to broken bones and fractures, and the animal protein in milk increases calcium loss. These issues are addressed by studies from 1997, 2009, and March 2015, respectively. Here I brought some more recent information. In an article, Calcium and Osteoporosis, from August this year by Chris Winners, a bachelor's in medicine, it cited two studies, and in both, they conclude that in adults, increased dairy decreases the rate of bone loss and leads to improvement bone density. A research on calcium intake and its relation to risk and fracture from 2015, led by Mark J. Bolden, a professor from the Department of Medicine of the University of Auckland, found that for dietary calcium, most studies reported no association between calcium intake and fracture. For milk and dairy intake, most studies also reported no association. In an article from August 2015 by the Linus Pauling Institute said that the overall calcium balance appears to be unchanged by high dietary protein intake in healthy individuals. So, as you see, recent studies shows that milk is good for bones. And the secondary claim, the advocates argues that ingestion of milk increases rates of prostate cancer, that a bone virus has been found to contribute to breast cancer, and that the growth hormones of cows lead to increase in cancer risk when their milk is consumed. Regarding the prostate cancer rates, the advocates use evidence from a study led by Dolphin Ogden. And the conclusion states that, in conclusion, we showed increased risk of prostate cancer with intakes of total dairy, milk, and cheese, but an inverse association for whole milk. About the bovine virus, the advocate used a study by Gertrude Bury at UC Berkeley, professor of biology. In an article of Berkeley News, the professor states that it's important to note that our results do not prove that the virus causes cancer, and also the virus could have come through the consumption of unpasteurized milk or uncooked meat, or it could have been transmitted by other humans. And about the growth hormones in pasteurized milk, the advocates used an article posted by Joseph Mercola from 2007. But Mercola, in his website, he argues in favor of raw milk. That is an option for not having pasteurized milk. And he says that the raw milk has a lot of benefits, such as healthy bacteria that are beneficial for your gastrointestinal tract, high amounts of omega-3, and a lot of others. So, for the bovine virus, it is still uncertain if the virus is used by the cow's milk or uncooked meat. For the prostate cancer case, there is the whole milk, which decreases the risk, and for the growth hormones problems, there is the raw milk. Both cases show that there is types of milk that provide benefits regarding both issues. For the third claim, milk consumption had been led to link it to other diseases aside cancer. The advocate argues that milk intake is associated with anemia and heart disease, linked to Parkinson's disease, and also associated with higher mortality rates. Regarding the association of milk with anemia and heart disease, the advocate makes use of evidence from 2011. And in a synopsis of the symposia present in Europe and North America, 2014-2015, about regular fat diet in human health, Arne Astrup, a faculty from the Department of Nutrition of the University of Copenhagen, wrote that their emerging scientific evidence indicates that the consumption of regular fat dairy foods is not associated with an increased risk of cardiovascular disease. And in case of contributing to Parkinson's disease, the advocates use the research by Wendy Young, PhD, specialized in epidemiology. But in the conclusion of the research, he states, in summary, dairy foods, especially for milk and cheese, might be associated with Parkinson's disease, which still needs to be confirmed by well-designed prospective cohort studies, and the mechanism underlying these associations needs to be elucidated further. And lastly, the issue of milk association with mortality rates. The advocate used a study from Carl Mikeson. But in the study, he states, nonetheless, we cannot rule out the possibility that our design or analysis failed to capture the reverse causation phenomenon. People with a high predisposition for osteoporosis might have deliberately increased their milk intake. So, by recent studies, it's shown that milk is not associated with heart diseases. Regarding Parkinson's disease, the advocate states that there is still need confirmation, and the association with milk and mortality rates is diminished by the possibility of the reverse causation. In conclusion, by this, I have shown that milk is still a healthy choice. By showing that recent studies say that milk does not harm bones, there is not sufficient evidence that milk causes breast cancer, and there is a type of milk, whole milk, which decreases the risk of prostate cancer, and raw milk that does not have hormones. It has many benefits. And lastly, that milk is not associated with heart disease, and milk association with Parkinson's disease and mortality rates is not sufficient. So milk in its various types is still recommended to be consumed. Each person can analyze and decide what kind of milk is better for their own organisms and predispositions. Thank you.
Well, I know that you're rushing because you've got a lot of information. I think you may need to pick and choose a little bit so that you can get through this with a little bit more reasonable pacing. And you probably need to do that because your articulation is slightly different and it takes a little while to kind of acclimate ourselves to hearing some of the terms the way you're saying them. But once you got going, I thought it was pretty easy to follow. There's a good structure that's laid out and that you follow the advocate's points very clearly. On the first point, there's almost a point-by-point response to the specific evidence that the advocate is using with counter evidence to show different results and information and nice explanations on several of those points. I do think that there's a little bit of confusion on that first point because sometimes it seems like it suggests that there's no evidence that it has either a positive or a negative benefit or outcome there, and I assume that that's probably not the best answer that you give. It's a reasonable answer, but it seems like there's probably more data that would suggest that in the long run there are benefits to the calcium situation. I did think that you had one piece of information that suggested that that was really likely. On the second point, on the prostate cancer, I thought you did a very good job talking about how there's an inverse association. In fact, the results seem to deny this. You had very specific evidence. You also used quotes from the advocate's own evidence to suggest that you can't really reach these particular conclusions, and that there are a combination of factors that could account for this, and attributing it to milk is a little bit problematic. I thought that that worked really well as well. And in fact, you even had at the summary it says whole milk actually reduces the risk. So in the long run, it sounds like there is a type of milk that has the counter effect that the advocate's talking about. And on the third point, you went right at the evidence that the advocate used, suggesting that the consensus of evidence is that it's okay, and then you did have evidence from the advocate's own argument that says, look, we don't have any way to control for this, we can't tell if our design is adequate, we may have produced a result that is really a reverse causality situation, which I think is pretty devastating to the argument that the advocate's presenting. You do have a long summary. I do think you might want to shorten that up a little bit and simply say, the evidence doesn't show that calcium is hurt. In fact, there may be a benefit. The evidence doesn't show that it produces the prostate cancer that is being claimed here. In fact, whole milk seems to suggest that it has a beneficial effect on that. And the advocate's own evidence suggests that they can't reach a valid conclusion yet without additional study. So, keep it simple, keep it straight, get to the point. There you go. Thank you.